What's up, everybody? This is Track 2. I'm your host, Jared May the Rook, and I'm joined by
The other host, the kid Hunter Poole.
the kid, Hunter Poole, repping the. What you repping over there, bro?
I don't know. I don't know.
God, I thought you were about to show me something else at first. My God, look at that. Where'd you get that at?
I got it from the gun store. Nah, I'm just messing with y'all. I got it from. I got it on sale for $10 at Ross. So.
For those that are listening and not watching, it's a Ja Morant jersey for the Grizzlies. So
We're on Spotify. People listen to us now. We're creeping up a little bit.
people aren't just on the old live streams now. We're actually, we're progressing.
Your camera looks good today, man. Looks good.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be like your agent, so.
All right, well, keep me in check and let's get it going.
Let's just dribble the mother basketball, okay? So we got a couple of topics for you guys today. Of course, we got, per usual, our Dallas Cowboys news. We also are going to be covering some pretty controversial topics, such as the Ja Morant 25-game suspension that he was given to by the NBA. There's a lot of Joe Rogan controversy going on as well. Per usual, we're going to have our track rankings. We're going to have our deluxe tracks as well as our track records, which are our lyrics, songwriters, artists of the day. Can't wait to get started. But we're going to start off with our Dallas Cowboys talk. And one of the topics that we wanted to cover was, and this has kind of been going around on Twitter and stuff, that we kind of communicated on Twitter about it and said, we should probably talk about this, is whether or not Tony Pollard was a top 10 running back in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And we didn't really actually know where me and him ranked him initially. So we haven't really compared yet. So it'd be exciting to see where we both rank him at once this is all said and done. But we're going to name our top 10 running backs in the league currently and see if or not Pollard is implemented in that list.
And then once y'all hear our list, give feedback like, do we rank him too low or do we rank him too high? We don't even know where we have him ranked on our list, which is the funny part.
This is off the fly.
Yeah, off the fly too. But, looking back at his numbers last year, the Rook knows this. I'm the eye test kind of guy. I like to watch what's going on before, it's like you got some guys who just light up the box score. They do all these things, but like you watch them, they're like high volume. They box score doesn't really match the eye test. It's people like Tua and certain running backs as well.
Yeah, that's true for a lot. That's true for a lot of players, and that's something that we both try and keep holding each other accountable for. And I think it's funny because a lot of us get caught in the act sometimes. You're probably the best person I know at catching somebody in the act in that regard, where you're going off stats. Remember, this is what you said about this person, and so it keeps you in check. And I've learned since we're always around one another that when you do that sort of thing, I'm like, he's going to say this. I already know what he's going to say, but I just kind of put myself in a corner, and usually that happens, which is funny. But yeah, it's a good point. The eye test is a big one, and you kind of it's a hybrid. You can play with it a little bit. Pause.
So I'm going to read off some stats and tell me which one catches your eye the most. Last year, Tony Pollard had 193 carries, 1,007 yards. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry, which equals out to 62.9 yards a game. He had, which I was very shocked by this, he only had 39 catches last year, averaging 9.5 yards a catch with 23.5 yards receiving a game. Which one kind of stands out to you the most?
I would have said the yards per carry.
5.
Over 5 yards per carry with just about 200 carries was pretty impressive. But I'm curious to know which one you wanted me to say because I feel like I didn't say the right one.
No, that's actually the one I wanted you to say.
Okay, cool. Sweet. All right, because I was like, I don't know. I think he wants me to say this one because it stuck out to me. So.
What?
Oh, my bad. Yeah, pause.
And then, that ranked him in the NFL. There was quarterbacks on the list, but, I just want to go strictly running backs. I ranked him second in the league. You had Aaron Jones at 5.3, with 213 attempts, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard was second with 5.2 yards a carry with 193 attempts. Travis Etienne, I can say his last name now, so averages 5.1 yards a carry at 220 yards attempt, which is also very good.
Wow, yeah.
And then Nick Chubb averaged 5 yards a carry at 302 attempts.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and then to end off the list, it goes Ramondre Stevenson at 5 yards a carry at 210 attempts. So he doesn't have as much carries as some of these, like, running backs like Chubb, Josh Jacobs, and all that. But I mean, 5.2 yards a carry, you run that on first or second down, like that can go from like a, 2nd and 5 to like maybe a, 3rd and 2. What's good is too is he's also a home run hitter, so he can pop off at like any second of the game. And I've grown over, my love for Zeke, and Tony Pollard has definitely grown on me a little bit. Still Zeke until I die, but I'm Pollard right now over him.
It seems like you like holding on to the past a little bit when it comes to Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks. It's almost like the nostalgia overwhelms you.
And Zeke, I miss that guy. But I'm all about moving forward too. So Tony Pollard is my new favorite Cowboys running back.
We talked about mentioning like Malik Davis, and we're like, I don't even think a lot of people know who that is. So
yeah, maybe like
just avoid it.
The Cowboys fans know who Malik
Davis
is.
So, but I'm glad you did the yards per carry for the 5.2 thing, because that's one of the things that stuck out to me as well. Both Zeke and Pollard almost rushed. Zeke almost rushed for 1,000 again, and it doesn't feel like he got that close, but he had it was there, and the stats don't lie when it comes to that sort of deal. Pollard was just over 1,000, and some people would argue he might have been underutilized. So it's pretty fancy to see that he had over 5 yards per carry, and that he's number 2 in the league. And one of the interesting things is those first 3 running backs that you mentioned, all 3 are kind of the same scrappy, speedy kind of guys. Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, and Travis Etienne, which I think Travis Etienne got Tony Pollard player comps comparisons when he kind of entered the league, because he kind of ran similar, as well as Alvin Kamara.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think Alvin Kamara was the main one, but I think personally I like that he kind of reminded me of Pollard in the way he ran.
Also, I like Aaron Jones and Tony Pollard as well. They kind of, they're not like the biggest guys like on the planet, but they like when they hit the hole, like they're hitting it. And it's to be seen. We'll see it more next year with Tony Pollard being the lead back now. We don't know if Mike McCarthy is going to do like, again, 50-50, 60-40, how that's going to do. Because, you want, like Tony Pollard, you want him all 3 downs. But we have yet to see him do that for a whole season.
Yeah, that is true. It's a concern.
Kind of goes to this list. I kind of want to hear your list first, and then kind of.
I'll jab into my list, and then I'll just like short comment on what you just said. I think it's important to note that that's a real concern. Is like he hasn't played a full season as a full running back 1, as well as he's coming off an injury. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So I'm going to go through my top 10 running backs, and you can agree or disagree with this list. So I hope that you disagree with it, because I want to be outside the matrix, preferably. But I'll start at number 1, and it works better for the list. But number 1, I got That's How a White Man Runs a Football, Christian McCaffrey. He's at my number 1. He's your Swiss Army knife. He's your top 3 running back in every skill category. I think he's top 3 in the passing game, top 3 in the running game, top 3 in the, maybe pass blocking, and just any other accessory for a running back. I think he's top 3 in. And so I think that just say it again.
And he could throw a football.
Yeah, and he can throw a football 1,000 or 50 yards downfield to their president of the team, John Lynch. But number 2, I had Jonathan Taylor. And so what's interesting about that one is I know he had an off year last year, but a lot of people forget how electric he is as a complete back. especially running the ball. I kind of compare him a little bit to not like a Nick Chubb, but in production and how he services a team. I think he's very similar to Nick Chubb because you don't see them a lot in the passing game, but you see them putting up really efficient numbers as a running back. Kind of like the Debo thing that I always joke about. He's not a great receiver, but he is a really good running back. It's just kind of like that's actually their primary role, so it's more relevant with like Jonathan Taylor.
You're sleeping on my boy Nick Chubb,
which is number 3.
Okay.
Yeah, number 3 was Nick Chubb, and I kind of contemplated putting him at 2. It really doesn't matter to me. You can shuffle him around 2 or 3. But I think he's
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Chubb is most consistent. I think he's the toughest runner. I think the closest guy that comes to him with being the toughest runner might be like somebody like Dameon Pierce. I think people will be very impressed with him. I think he's going to have a bounce back. Well, not a bounce back. He doesn't have it, like I mentioned earlier, he doesn't really have a lot of impact in the passing game. So that it kind of like when you're considering the job of a running back, the passing game's extra. So that's why I put him as high as I did. Saquon Barkley was number 4 for me. I think he had a really, really efficient 2022 season. He's battled some injuries, but he's shown that he can kind of come back from it, especially with his athleticism and agility. We saw very good flashes and signs of agility last year. And, the one thing I always knock on him on is he can't pass protect. And, I don't believe he's a complete back, but talent wise, I think he should be up there, and I think he's pretty efficient.
Is Saquon better than Zeke now?
Now, that's tough to say. If Zeke, my only issue with Zeke is that he gets hurt now. Like, he's just playing hurt and he can't overcome it, and it just sucks. That's my primary issue. And he's a little bit greedy with money, but, at the same time, if Zeke had a healthy leg, which usually we saw in the first 3 or 4 games of the season in the last 2 years, Zeke was highly productive. And I think he was and you put that along with his pass blocking ability and his IQ and his passing game, I think he was better than Saquon Barkley. But right now it's tough to say because, of what's happened to him. But it's a lot closer than people think. Number 5 was Derrick Henry. I had him at number 5. I actually considered putting him lower in the list. I just think he's on his last leg, but he has been the most consistent, or one of the most consistent running backs in the league. He sprouts big plays, big stiff arm guy, very powerful. I don't understand how he doesn't look like he picks up a lot of steam until like he gets through the hole.
It's like he picks up all his speed comes from like 10 or 15 yards into the play, and that's where he hits like full sprint. And then now like he's one of the hardest people to catch down or catch in the third level because of the speed he gets. Because usually most guys get tired, but that's when he starts to.
Exactly. And it's pretty impressive. He's almost like, people always say, oh, he just hit second gear. Well, his second gear is 5 yards down the field. Then his third gear is 10 plus yards. And then his fourth gear is the rest of the way, and you got to fight the horsepower that comes with it. I mean, he's like freaking Optimus Prime running down the field. So number 6, I have Kenneth Walker. So I think he's a generational young talent. I think he was a huge sleeper last year, which we all suffered the price in our fantasy football league when you had him in 2 of ours that were in together. I think he's very explosive. I think he compares to Pollard in explosiveness, maybe even better. He had a lot of 20-plus, big touchdowns that he had. And so Kenneth Walker is on my list at number 6. And number 7, Josh Jacobs. I put him there, but what's crazy is I'm not really that high on him. I think he had an outstanding year last year, and I expect not the same numbers, but pretty good numbers. And he's been like these other running backs that I've mentioned. He's been pretty consistent. He's averaged 5 yards per carry almost last year, which is pretty good considering the workload he got. Number 8, I almost forgot about this guy, Breece Hall. Breece Hall is my number 8. He had, before he got hurt, almost 6 yards per carry. He had a torn ACL. Apparently it's clean. He can have a full recovery, but that dude was explosive when he had the football in his hands. So we hope that he has a clean recovery. But for him to have that kind of production so early in the season was so disappointing to watch for such a young guy. It's a lot like Javonte Williams, which I don't think he'll ever be the same. And that brings me to number 9, Tony Pollard. That's where I have Tony Pollard on my list. He finally gets there, but it's tough. There's a lot of really good running backs these days, and there's so many of them because they run by committee. But yeah, like Hunter mentioned earlier, he averaged over 5 yards per carry, which is impressive for almost 200 carries or attempts in a year. And I think he's top 5 in explosiveness and speed. I think he belongs in the top 10. I think he surpassed people like Kamara, and I think he's always been. I put him ahead of ETN because ETN has that fumble problem. And then number 10 to end my list was Dameon Pierce. And people are going to go, wow, why don't you have like Dalvin Cook in there or Kamara probably? But I'm looking ahead of things. I'm looking towards next year, not the year that happened, but mostly next year. So Dameon Pierce makes that list. I think he's going to have a great year, especially with the new head coach, D'Amico Ryans. But that's my top 10 running backs that I have currently going to the 2023 season, and I put Pollard in there, and I think he belongs there at number 9.
That was actually a really good list. So what I did was I had my list and then I put where you had them. So at number 1, I had McCaffrey too. Even though he's on my least favorite team, I can't diminish what he's done. He's gone to 2 teams and he's just, even at his size, just 3 down back and always gets the job done. Number 2, I had my boy Nick Chubb. He fell off a little bit towards the end of the year, especially when they got Watson back. I think they're doing a little bit more passing per usual, because Watson's easily the most talented quarterback they've had in who knows how long. I don't want to hear people say about Baker because no, Tom Watson is light years ahead of Baker.
Yeah.
At number 3, I had JT, so that's where we kind of flip flop there. I like JT's game in the in between the tackles and in the passing game.
Yeah, absolutely.
He just plays for a boring team. The culture not fun to watch, but he always kind of jumps out of the screen.
Oh, you don't like Sam Ehlinger?
But number 4, I also had Saquon. For first 3 years of his career, it was always Saquon is the best running back in football, but he couldn't play a full season. They were disrespecting people like Zeke, and then Derrick Henry became alive, and then here comes Nick Chubb. So I had Saquon at 4. Number 5, I have Derrick Henry as well.
Oh wow, we have a very similar list.
Oh no, wait. Actually, no, tell me, I just got confused. No, he's actually number 6. Number 5, I had Breece Hall.
Okay, yeah.
Breece Hall. I'm a big K9 guy, but Breece Hall is just.
Yeah, I would have thought you would have K9 in front of Breece Hall.
I like K9 better, but when it comes to making a list, I like to be like objective about things. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. The only thing that makes Breece better than K9 is not in the passing game. He wasn't in college.
Yeah.
He wasn't for the Seahawks. Just kind of not his thing. Derrick Henry at 6. And then I have, I have Josh Jacobs at 7.
Yes, we both had him at 7. It just seems like not disrespectful to have him outside the top 10 after the year he had, but then also we're just both not very high on Josh Jacobs.
I know. I'm starting to kind of look back at it, and it's like
kind of plays for a poverty franchise. You could argue it's like.
Yeah, I don't know, not really. Like, I have him at 7, and it's just like, I think he's not a bad running back. He's just kind of
boring.
He is boring. He's kind of little.
He's not like, he doesn't do anything extravagantly where it's like, damn, I love watching ETN bust the move inside the tackles. I like watching Zeke leap. I like watching Pollard run for 70+, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I like watching Saquon Barkley do a spin move. But, it's just production purely with Josh Jacobs, which is good.
And then at number 8, I have my boy K9.
There he is.
K9 off the leash. Like you said, he's kind of like Pollard. He's very very explosive. The only thing that takes away is that he's not in the passing game. He just I don't.
Right.
I think he played. Let's see, he played half a season basically, and he probably had like 15 catches. I don't know the exact number, but he was never on there in third downs. 3rd and 5 or more, he was not in the game. Really pissed me off for fantasy, but and then number 9, I have Tony Pollard as well.
Yeah, then that was accidental. Like,
Yeah,
I think that's so funny that I don't think that's even the first time we've done something like that, where it's just like we throw a list out and it's similar.
they're probably gonna be like, "Oh, they talked about it way before." It's like, man, shut up. But
Yeah.
And at number 10, I have Travis Etienne. And looking back at this list, I think if there's one player who could jump this list would be Etienne or K9. But everybody else, I think, is pretty much solidified. Derrick Henry might fall back, Josh Jacobs, and then you got people.
Yeah, those veterans.
Yeah, Etienne, K9, because it's like a younger league. If you're playing Dynasty, you don't want to draft Derrick Henry anymore. You want people like K9, Brees Hall, maybe Jamar Gibbs. You kind of want to get those younger legs because obviously a lot of running backs aren't making it to their third contract. You get the first one, they might get paid the second time, and then by
Right.
the end they're just out the league.
It's over. Yeah.
So are we going to see that with Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Saquon? Like,
I mean, there were rumors that Derrick Henry was going to get traded as well in the offseason, because Titans are in that sort of a rebrand, and they got Hassan Haskins the year prior and McNichols in the passing game. So they kind of maybe were banking on that young talent. But I don't know. I just can't see Derrick Henry in a different uniform, a lot like how I couldn't see Aaron Rodgers, but here we are.
Yeah. Honestly, just one thing, a little off topic. I hope people are watching this because, damn, my arms look good.
Now, I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, I should probably shout out the arms. You can definitely tell you've been in the gym, so respect there.
Yeah.
Who would be proud is probably like Top G would probably be really proud of you that you look like you've been hitting the push-ups. So
Yeah, hitting the push-ups every day, doing some arms. Just kind of doing what men do. Men will be men, right?
if there was one thing you could say to the younger generation, people that are 18 years or younger, if you have anything that you would like to say to them right now, if any motivational words at all, do you have any?
Stay hard.
Respect.
And yeah, well, stay hard, right? Like, but
Stay hard like Goggins.
yeah, not to get off topic, but
Yeah, so let's get into our track rankings of the day. So we were joking on text about like kind of trolling some other people about running backs and stuff. Obviously running backs was the topic of the day with Tony Pollard. And anyway, we said we're kind of struggling to find a topic. We're like, dang, why don't we just do top running backs since 2000? And, it was kind of a shortened, condensed list. So we hybrided it or expanded it with top 3 running backs since 2010, which I will cover. And then the kid will cover top 3 running backs since 2000. So I'm going to start with my honorable mentions. My honorable mentions are going to be, I didn't actually have Adrian Peterson in the top 3, just for the sake that you probably have him in your top 3 from 2000. So all the respect for AP, I'm just trying to make it exciting and go with a little bit different list. 9 times out of 10, I would have him in this list. The other one was Jamal Charles. He's not in my list, but he's an honorable mention. He's a fantasy god. He was very exciting to watch for the Kansas City Chiefs. But number 3, I had Marshawn Lynch. Okay. Marshawn Lynch had a very, very effective season. He kind of became relevant once he got to the Seattle Seahawks. So it was very interesting to see him. He had almost 8,000 total yards rushing in that era that he was playing. Almost 70 rush touchdowns, which is pretty insane for the amount of yards that he ran. And he had 4 seasons of 1,000 plus yards. And then number 2, I had Matt Forte. So, which is kind of interesting. And
fantasy god right there.
Another fan. So he was very, very effective. And the reason I put him at 2 in front of Marshawn Lynch is because of his presence in the passing game. I thought it was always exciting to have him on your fantasy team because you're like, dang, he could run for 1,000 yards a year and then maybe catch for 500. So
If you
He was very good.
you put Doug Martin at 1, you got the whole fantasy god crew as your top 3.
Unfortunately, I did not have Doug Martin at 1, even though I wish to God I'd pick somebody like him. My number 1 is actually LaShawn McCoy, which, dude, I did not. I had him at number 3. I had him at number 3, and then I was looking at it, and I was comparing everything that I could find, and there's just nobody better during that era. It's just simply.
We always joke around about his takes on television, but strictly football, he was a pretty damn good running back.
Oh yeah, I mean he had over 10,000 yards rushing. He had 70 rush touchdowns, and that's not even to mention that he had 16 or so reception touchdowns during that time, and he had 6 seasons of 1,000+ yards rushing. And that's for primarily the Philadelphia Eagles, unfortunately. But just him on TV shows just pisses me off. I did not want him in the list, but game is game. We always say that game is game. You got to respect it when you see it. So yeah, number 3, Marshawn Lynch. Number 2, Matt Forte. Number 1, LaShawn McCoy. Shady.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about that list, man, you left out my boy Zeke. But that's.
Well, I think I don't put him in that. I think I like him in the. I considered him and DeMarco Murray, but I consider them to be later.
Did you think about Le'Veon Bell? Did he kind of cross your mind?
No, I did. I looked at his stuff and I was not impressed. He only had like 2 or 3 1,000+ yard receiving or rushing years. He didn't have a long tenure.
Yeah, he was. Once he went to the Jets, he was kind of. But I like that list. And hey, shout out if you throwing some names like Matt Forte out there, bro, and Jamal Charles.
Yeah, I thought I would mention them and give them a little shout out, little track shout out.
Matt Forte was the first running back I had for fantasy. He was
respect.
So
I had Toby Gerhart.
I had Toby Gerhart,
Peyton Hillis,
and Mike Allstott or Allset. What's his name?
Allstott. Yeah.
Allstott. I'm gonna go with the top, like the Rook said. I'm gonna go with the top 3 running backs of the 2000s. I've had a couple of these debates before. I'm going to save, the best for last, of course. But to start off the list at number 3, I'm going to go with the most electric running back of the 2000s, which is Chris Johnson.
Okay, yeah.
C2K.
Love that.
For people who don't remember Chris Johnson, he ran for 2,000. He had a 2,000-yard season, and he was the most electric running back from, he had 80-yard touchdowns, 85-yard touchdowns. He ran a 4.2. Very exciting to watch. He kind of made me think of, especially when you said Jamal Charles, I was like, I have Chris Johnson. So I'm like,
yeah,
it's same field kind of deal. And, he was on those Tennessee teams with Vince Young. And,
the legend.
Watch. Number 2, I'm going to go with LT. He had the touchdown.
LaDainian.
Yeah, he had 31 touchdowns one season. He played on some really good Chargers teams where he's definitely the focal point. He had Drew Brees and he had Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates. He had a little bit better supporting cast than my number 1 guy, but just
R.I.P. Vincent Jackson.
Yeah, Vincent Jackson, R.I.P. Just what he did was electrifying, and he's one of the best college running backs ever.
What's funny about LaDainian Tomlinson is that he was the first. Our family every year buys like an ornament for Christmas or whatever. He's the first ornament I ever bought was a LaDainian Tomlinson ornament.
Yeah,
and then the following one was Ben Roethlisberger around his allegations. So,
y'all as a family are very good at picking things, man. Y'all. I like that. I like the Big Ben ornament. I never thought I'd hear the day that you would say I have a big.
That's one of the few times you'll get the soft side out of me. Pause.
And then at number 1, I have also, in my opinion, the best running back ever, Adrian Peterson.
I respect that. Yeah, absolutely.
Adrian Peterson. When you look at supporting cast and what he did for so long, and he still was willing to or still able to do it at the age of like 33 and 34. Adrian Pearson, he holds a single game rushing record with 296 yards. He tore his ACL next season, ran for 2K.
Yeah.
Not many people can come back from a torn ACL in general, but to come back and get 2,000 yards, just a freak. And he has his off-field issues, but when it comes to football, we're just talking about football lists.
Yeah. In that case, I'm putting Ray Rice. No, I'm just kidding. Ray Rice, Kareem Hunt, and Alvin Kamara on my top 3.
Yeah, that's just perfect right before the Ja Morant talk.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, if you're ready to get into that, I'm ready too.
Yeah. So AP, Chris Johnson, LT, AP, my top 3 running backs of the 2000s.
I love that list. Respect to Adrian Peterson, put him number 1.
But yeah, like the Rook said, obviously for those who are not watching the actual podcast and instead of listening to it, sorry, I'm not used to moderating like that. Sorry, I'm getting better. A little practice.
It's a little scary sometimes, bro. Sometimes even when I start the recording, I'm just like, wait a minute, I gotta do this. I gotta do this intro. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, it's a little tough, but I'm wearing a Ja Morant jersey, which brings us to our next topic. Ja Morant, after a few allegations, or not allegations, but Instagram posts, from y'all who haven't seen it, he started off with at a strip club after a loss to Denver, and he was shown flashing a gun in the club. It took him a while to figure out what they were going to do. He was on leave with the team, and then Adam Silver gave him an 8-game suspension. He went through this rehab, thing. He even gave out a letter to the public about how he's sorry. Comes to find out that the letter was from Chat GPT or whatever it's called.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I thought that, I was like, I bet he didn't even write that. But I didn't know that. I didn't know it was a Chat GPT note.
Yeah, it was, people found out it was done by that. And yeah, so then, he's suspended technically for 8 games, but what he was serving, really came out to 2 games. He was able to play in the playoffs, and then right when the playoffs ended, for his team, they had the what's it called? He's friends on Instagram Live. It's I think it's real early in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. Probably been doing whatever all night, and he starts to flash what looks like a gun, and as soon as he has it like this.
Yeah, it's small, right? It was a small one.
Yeah, so then the buddy pulls it away, or pulls the phone away, no, that. So then he gets into this. Now he's in trouble again, and from the suspension, and now all these games being suspended twice. Adam Silver, gives him this second 25-game suspension to start off the season. Money-wise, he lost about $50 million. He's losing about $50 million from these suspensions.
Lost a bag.
He hasn't lost his endorsements yet, but from a team perspective, they'll be okay. They actually play a lot better without him for some reason. Tyus Jones, if they bring him back, he's a more fluent point guard, kind of gets the more people involved. Ja Morant, not that he can't pass, but he's kind of reckless with the ball a little bit, kind of all over the place. People like that, it's hard to build your. It's already hard as a GM to build your team around someone like that. You've seen it with doesn't work out usually. You got John Wall, Westbrook.
Just you get a mixture of different cultures that come through these NBA teams, and sometimes they either blossom the team or they either poison them. It really hasn't really been any in between.
They're very exciting to watch, but it's it's
I
hard.
feel like you just find yourself asking a lot of times, because I remember there were a lot of arguments about this, about who was the problem on any team. The Lakers, when they traded Russell Westbrook, everybody was like, "Is Russell Westbrook the problem?" They traded him, and then the Lakers started winning a bunch of games, and so they claimed that Russell Wilson was the problem. With the Phoenix Suns, they were like, "Is Chris Paul the problem? Will KD ever play? Is he just being lazy?" It's just like a repetitive thing.
Yeah, they but like in the past, Ja Morant kind of he's not like injury prone, but he has been injured quite a bit, and they play better without him. Like they have a winning record, and usually when you lose your best player, your team, especially like NBA, because NBA is one of those sports where it's 5-on-5, and like
Right. Yeah.
missing one of your best players, like your team could go to like shit real quick. But like they work it out. They have a good culture around, and just losing. It's just all about like he's not making smart decisions, and it just goes to show like. People are saying like, "Oh, he's not a gangster. He's not this, blah blah." But it's like,
Like, how many people actually know him though? Because one of the ironic things is that I found is that Outkick, who's run by Clay Travis, reported that Ja Morant believes, and his team, like I guess executives that work, like his agents and stuff like that work with him, believe that the NBA is out to get him, almost embracing like this victim mentality. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, my God, I mean,
to do this stuff.
you're a superstar in the NBA, and you firmly believe that the NBA is out to get you. Like it just it kind of reminds me of a little story. So this is gonna be real quick, but my dad was on the phone the other day, and he called me about this. That he was on the phone with somebody in the backyard, and some little kid or somebody just walked up to our back fence and just screamed loud as hell. And so my dad kind of looked over and found that it was a kid with a backpack with a fishing pole. So my dad chased him in it, or just not chased him, but like went over around to kind of see who it was in his bike. And it was so loud, my mom even came out and was like, "What was that?" And so anyway, my dad confronted him, and he before he confronted him, the kid mouthed off to my dad, and my dad pulled over and said, "What'd you say?" And all kind of stuff. And he said my dad asked him. Basically, they were kind of going back and forth. He's like, "When's the last time you got your ass beat?" And he's like, "A month ago. I ding dong did somebody, and the guy chased me down on a bike and beat me up." And my dad basically is like, "Did you learn anything?" And so I'm like, I apply this with the Ja Morant story. I'm like, I mean, if you really think the NBA is out to get you, I think it's just you got to self-evaluate your own decisions here, which is pretty freaking self-explanatory. Don't flash a handgun on Instagram Live where you have 15, 16, 17 or younger, boys and girls who are watching this crap. It's just pretty self-explanatory. And I know we're talking about it, and I tried to find the best way to make an interesting take about it. And it's like, I think he's just out to get himself more than anything. I don't think the NBA is out to get him. I think he's out to get himself, and he's surrounding himself with negative influence.
Yeah, like, and hopefully he learned his lesson. If basketball's not the biggest thing in his life, losing $50 million just for not little mistakes, but just doing little things like that where you easily should have not done. $50 million, like that's a lot of money.
Like, yeah, and he thinks NBA is out to get him. It's like, well, you were due $50 million.
Like, Ja, they gave you a chance, and luckily, a lot of people think 25 was a little too soft because, as soon as the NBA Finals ended, it was like, boom, Ja Morant suspended. And, 25 games, like, they can still make the playoffs and all that, but we'll see what they try to do. Nobody's going to want to trade for him at the moment, but give it time and we'll see what's going on from there.
Yeah, and then I guess a closing remark would be, it should not be the agenda of a professional sports organization to kind of martyr a young generational talent like this, because a lot of people are kind of laughing at Ja Morant about what's happening to him, and they make the jokes. Twitter is a wild place, like we always mention. I think that even if he doesn't want it, that Ja Morant should get help and he should receive the help. And I don't know. It's not about second chances for me. He doesn't even have to play. He doesn't have to pick up another basketball game. He can if he wants to. It's his choice ultimately. I'm just saying, for a kid with as much superstar talent as him and as young as he is, he just needs some guidance. And I don't think we should martyr the guy for, thankfully he hasn't killed or hurt anybody. But I'm just saying, it's important to help these people.
No, yeah, it's kind of like, so like I said, like when you say help, you mean like get like a mentor, right? You're talking about
Yeah, something like that. Somebody to keep you in check. I mean, it's almost like a big brother. Say that, hey, like my brother, the analyst, sometimes he slaps me on the shoulder and he's like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? And you're like, you're right.
yeah.
I thankfully I have 3 of those that can do that with me. But
I mean, I got 2 sisters. They ain't telling me what to do. Sorry,
the lone wolf.
Sorry, sisters, but you're only 4'10". You can only do so much at your height.
Respect. You're like the little baby cubs, and you're the gorilla, or you're the grizzly. All right, you want to run through our deluxe tracks?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give a couple, deluxe tracks, kind of do like a little quick rundown, and then I'll let you speak on yours.
Yes, sir.
So for people who don't know about our track records, our deluxe is kind of like, honorable mentions, kind of like quick kind of news, like kind of 2-minute drill, kind of, sum it up real quick, give a bunch of things. For my track records, I got more NBA news. Bradley Beal traded to the Suns. He's now going to team up with, at the moment, KD, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton could be moved. I actually just saw a report while we're on the pod that he might stay with the Suns, but that is to be determined. They're going to be real top heavy. You don't know what they're going to – they can score 90 points between 3 people easily.
Right.
But it takes more than that, build a team around. We'll see how that works. A little baseball news. If y'all don't know how great Ohtani is leading his team, the Angels, in every category from hitting to pitching.
His contract's going to be massive.
He might need $1 billion contract. It is that crazy. Is he going to get that? No, but
$500 million contract.
When you have a player in today's baseball where people are just better athletes, people are throwing faster, hitting better, and you can lead your team in both things, like pay the man what he wants. He's basically like Patrick Mahomes of baseball right now. And then in some other news, some people might look at it as sad news, but this person looked at this as, relief to find this out. But Tony Snell was diagnosed at the age of 31 with autism. And
yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so he got as he started to notice his 18-month-old son was kind of not developing those skills, kind of, to himself. And Tony Snell said, well, I have those. I had the same thing when I was growing up. So they both got tested for autism, and they both came out positive. Tony Snell is a professional basketball player. He was a first-round pick. Very solid role player for the last few years. His age has kind of caught up to him, but kind of just shows you, even though you're diagnosed with something like that, like, show people that just because you might have this, like, you can still do things. And you got people like Elon Musk and Sir Isaac Newton, people like that, these creators who are on the spectrum of autism and
pioneers of intelligence.
Yes, you got people like that. It just shows you, like, even when you get something like this, it might seem like it's like, sad, but it might be relief, and it kind of makes you show people that even though I have this, I can still do a lot of things. And shout out to Tony Snell for doing what he's going to do. Now he says he's going to join the community, help out people and show you that You can do what you want whenever you can.
Yeah. First round of deluxe tracks. Here comes the second. Netflix just announced a QB documentary. It's an 8-episode documentary that exclusively produced under Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions in the inaugural NFL X Netflix collaboration. It specifically covers 3 starting quarterbacks from the 2022 season, being Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. And the first episode premieres on July 12th. Star Wars just announced with Ubisoft that they're going to make a Star Wars Outlaw open world game. It's a female protagonist-led game, open world video game, like I mentioned, for consoles and PC. It's produced by Ubisoft, which means they're responsible for the Assassin's Creed franchise. So it just means that it's going to suck. So I think we should just outlaw the game instead of just buy the Outlaw game. And then Tucker Carlson has come out with some Twitter news. So after mysteriously vacating Fox News reportedly due to opposing views, Tucker Carlson caught a magnitude of steam as viewers from the left laughed in his face as if he was fired. However, those with knowledge should have known to prepare themselves for the power Tucker Carlson possessed. In response to his release, he began producing with his personal production team from Fox News, which they departed Fox News, and now MSNBC has higher ratings than Fox News, which is pretty crazy to see. But it just shows you how influential Tucker Carlson is. His own Twitter news episodes are now being aired, and they're getting almost half of 500 million views each time he drops one. And they're about 10 to 13 minutes long. And fuck, I love capitalism. So that wraps up our deluxe tracks. And now we're going to get into some serious stuff. If you guys are not aware, obviously Joe Rogan has the biggest Spotify platform on the app, and his podcast reaches out to many, many, many people. So, and You Get Tracks is probably the best guest. I think a close second would be Nelk Boys. But he just had Robert Kennedy Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the podcast. If you guys do not know who he is a Democratic candidate for the presidential election in 2024. However, he is not a Democrat for the most part. And he's a very interesting guy. And if you have not checked that episode, I highly recommend going to check out the Joe Rogan podcast. Kind of educate yourself on what's really going on. He kind of pinpoints 3 main things. He talks about vaccines. He talks about the war in Ukraine. He talks about kind of strengthening up the United States economy compared to how China is doing and stuff like that. So if you're interested, go check that out. It's kind of difficult, so I want to play a video. I want to play a video that kind of provides context, and then me and the kid will analyze the video. So let's just listen to this video we got here.
All these controversial opinions that you, because of all these controversial opinions that you have you had anyone debate you publicly about any of these?
Nobody will debate me. For 18 years, nobody will debate me. In fact, I've scheduled many, many debates, and I've asked Hotez many, many times.
For those who don't know, he's talking about Peter Hotez,
here, why don't you debate Robert Kennedy? And he said, because he's a cunning lawyer or something like that. But I've debated Hotez on the telephone with kind of a referee, and his science is just made up. He cannot stand by it. He can't cite studies.
Well, he was trying to tell me that vaccines don't cause autism. I said, okay,
and his daughter has autism, and he wrote a book.
Yeah.
But I asked my daughter didn't get her autism from a vaccine, but I've read that book, and there is no science cited in that book. It's just him saying, it didn't happen. And listen, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, and God bless him, and God bless that little girl, and good energy going to them, and but it's not. He's using her as a leverage to tell people there's no problem here.
But this is my point, that I asked him what does, and he said there's there's environmental factors they're aware of. I go, what are those? And he couldn't cite them.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be so sure to say this definitely doesn't but you're telling me there's a bunch of environmental factors that do cause it, and we're aware of those factors, but you're not aware of them, and you're an expert in this?
Yeah.
How is that possible?
That's the
he's a health expert.
That's the big question that anybody who says it's not the vaccines, I'm like, okay, fine.
But they don't want, if you say it's not the vaccines, people go, good. That's what I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted to hear.
What is it?
When you say it is the vaccines, people go, oh my God, I don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. And they get angry. They get angry at you, and they go, oh, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. But the fact that no one will debate
about the vaccines,
especially now, they can't say now that you're not popular. And what's crazy is that Biden now has decided he's not even going to debate anybody in the primary.
I had I'll just tell you one story. The Connecticut State Legislature was debating had a bill to end the religious exemptions for childhood vaccines in Connecticut, and the head of the Democratic Party in the legislature asked me to come out and debate a Yale professor in front of the legislature. And I said, great. I'm from the Yale Medical School. And he called back and said, there's going to be 2 of them, and it's against you. And they're going to get 2/3 of the time, and you get 1/3. And I said, fine. And then he called back and said, there's going to be 4 of them, and you each get 6 minutes. And I said, that's all I need. And it's not fair, but it's all I need. And so I fly out on a red eye. I get to the State House, and it's me and 4 empty chairs. Somebody told them, or they all decided, I don't know, not to show up. And that's happened to me again and again and again and again.
That's crazy.
So there we go. Yeah. And so he kind of finishes the story. But, I wanted to talk about, it's very tough to pick and choose what to talk about from that specific episode because it's very controversial, a lot of the topics. But it's very interesting, and I think it should be discussed. So like I mentioned before, he kind of focuses on that vaccine deficiency. And so we're not going to pull up any numbers, but what we really wanted to kind of discuss is we both were monitoring it on Twitter, right, was the Joe Rogan challenged Dr. Peter Hotez, who RFK mentions in the podcast, and says, I will give you $100,000 to any charitable organization that you decide to give to if you would want to debate RFK Jr. with no time limit on his podcast platform. To which I think every pro-vaccine doctor came to that guy's defense and said that basically their constant message was that no medical expert should ever be challenged by an anti-vaxxer or a conspiracy theorist to, be challenged on their beliefs or science. And here's my argument. I think, Peter Hotez, who first off is disgusting looking. They actually had a podcast with Joe Rogan previously, which he kind of mentions that he spoke with him and stuff like that. But he talks about his diet. And, if you look at Peter Hotez, he just looks gray. He's got nasty looking teeth. I don't want to harp on the guy, but for somebody who is representing Houston, literally our state of Texas, who is representing in that kind of fashion and saying, you should do this and you should keep your health this way and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a doctor, trust what I say. And then you live that kind of lifestyle. It's kind of like having the personal trainer that's 400 pounds and kind of telling you what to do to lose weight. You're like, the fuck? That's not how this works. So anyway, Joe Rogan kind of was calling him out on that. So I think that's important. That's rule number 1. Look at who you're talking to, and know who you're talking to. And if science is fact, then show the numbers. And you should be able to discuss the numbers because
you should want to debate. You should want
to debate to find the answer. And RFK has some, like I said earlier, we're not going to go specifically into it because we don't want to misquote it or, give misinformation or whatever you want to call it, just because we're not the most highly educated people to talk about this, but we think it's interesting and should be talked about. But, man, a lot of things that RFK Jr. was talking about in that podcast made a lot of sense, and I think that they should have a debate. I don't know what you think about that or what you want to kind of nitpick from that video.
I I agree with everything you're saying. Just with like, why would you not want to debate it? If you're a firm believer of something and you know it's like correct and all this, like you should want to debate. If someone said, if you were like, let's debate Romo and Dak, just something little like that, and I'd be like, okay, let's go. Like I'm down. Like I'm gonna debate it. Because what I think is right, what you think is right, and you could debate, put up the facts, put all these things. But like with the COVID, with like the vaccine, I mean, it's like, now we're in the stage where it's like, it's been like this for the last few years, where it's like,
it's crazy to say it lasts for years.
Like whatever, which I've always been like this with a component. Like you could go to the doctor and they can tell you something and you just believe it.
Believe it, exactly.
But you don't necessarily know if it's true or not, because then, it kind of, what really woke me up was like, like the trans stuff, like kind of with the medical, like just like the doctors, like what is a woman, like watching that documentary, like the people.
Oh yeah, that's a wild one. If we talked about that, man, I could get into that heavily, but it's just
try not to get into it, but just more of like, these are people.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, these are people who are like medical professionals that are saying all this, and Matt Walsh challenges them, and then they're like, okay, no, we're ending the debate. I'm done talking about it. And then it's the same thing with the vaccine now. Like he's like, okay, it's gonna be 1-on-1. All right, no, it's 1-on-2. He's like, all right, now it's 4-on-1. Okay, I just want let's talk. Let's just get some conversation out there, and it doesn't happen. And it's just, man, it's.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, it's pretty crazy, because with these medical experts that specialize in those specific topics and research and science and area, that's their pitcher's mound. That's their bread and butter. They should be able to talk about that all day and night and defend their league. And science is science. This is what we've known. I know we're bailing on this now, but this is what we've known since we were young, is that, 2 + 2 is 4, and the square root of that is blank, and blah, 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 that math was math. It was correct because it was correct. And it lines up this way. And you can do it in the Bible, and you can do it with the pyramids, and math lines up. And so does science. And because of X, Y, and Z, science has one truth to it. There are not multiple truths to true science. And that is a fact. There is one truth, and it's not like debatable. But we've gotten into this groove, like you mentioned, the past couple of years, which is crazy to say, like 2 or 3 years now, where science is there's literally one side of the argument for science and another. And you wonder where people are getting this information from on the one side. And then the other side, they tell you, we get it from here, we saw it in here, it's right, it's accessible here. It's a lot of like what happened with when the police brutality stuff kind of came out. And I don't want to speak on that too much, but people started doing their own research instead of recognizing, holy shit, they're, some of these people are doing 50% of the crimes. But the other side would just reject the hell out of that. And you're like, well, this is not like an issue. Like, we're not trying to bring these sides of the arguments up to spread negativity. We're trying to spread this awareness so we can find a solution to the problem that is killing people. So it's very interesting to see that the guy that is so pro, like you mentioned, Hunter, what he thinks is right and what he knows is right, and he can't defend that against a conspiracy theorist. He's like, nah, it'd be jolting his conspiracies. But they're not. They're not conspiracies. They're statistics that he has found. He literally fucking sued Anthony Fauci. Trump hired RFK Jr. onto his administration, and they went through these vaccine information. It is nuts. I don't understand why we can't have a civil conversation. I mean, when Biden won the presidential election in 2022, people really wanted Joe Rogan to moderate that conversation. I don't know if you remember that, because it's so corrupt with these donor class, news moderators. It's so, they would give Biden all this time to talk and tell Trump to shut up, or the vice versa. It's just imbalanced.
Well, it's crazy because, what's also coming to light too is like the Twitter stuff with like the vaccines, COVID itself, and like, all these allegations. And what's happening is people are like, oh, Elon's making it to where only Twitter's now for people on the right side. And he's like, actually, it's not even that. He's like, I'm all about free speech. And he's like, actually, like, you know, pro-vaccine and all this, but, you know, I'm not going to, you know, mute somebody's opinion or whatever because, you know, that's just, you don't want that word out. He's like, I'm all about free speech. And then that's when, like, you know, RFK and the other guy, they were just like, you know, that stuff's not going away. Like, it's not going to be pushed under the rug and all that. And Elon Musk taking over Twitter now is like, that stuff's more going to come to light, which gives people more information about what was going on with when the vaccine was being made, and like,
yeah,
all of that.
Yeah. And the whole premise behind this is that we both agree on, that we've talked about many times off camera, is that you should have the freedom to do whatever the hell you want to do when it comes to medical decisions. But you should not ever, ever be forced to make a medical decision like that, especially with something that does not have data to back it up for more than 9 months. Are you kidding? That's like, I don't even know what you could compare that to, but it's like, man, we've never tried this before. You want to try it? And, you know, it's dangerous, could kill you. You don't know what's in it, but you're going to inject it into your body. You know, and one of the things that, which we can't really go into, but, you know, like you mentioned the what is a woman thing. And, you know, I think about the drugs that they give, you know, that for like hormone blockers, and, you know, it's just a mess. It's an absolute mess. And the way that they deflect commentary, it seems demonic to me. It seems like if you're watching a movie of a possession or something like that, or you're watching like an exorcist do his work, you almost see him find this like niche that makes the demon break out and just come out of its shell and shut you down, tries to shut you up, makes loud noises. And I think you see that a lot with these gender ideologist studies and stuff like this. When he gets down to the truth, that was the trigger word.
Yeah.
He was like, because, you know, I kind of just thought about this, but, you know, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. And so he's saying, I just want to find out the truth. And then they go, why'd you say that? What do you mean the truth? That's no, you're talking, you know, get out. I'm stopping the interview. And it's the same thing with like these vaccine things. And it's like, it's just a mess, man. I just feel like there's an influence of some kind that's supernatural over these things, and there's no control over it. But
as long as
you gotta talk about it.
Like, you know, you could be on whatever side, but it's like, in the day, as long as someone, if you think the vaccine works for you, go get it. If you don't think it doesn't work for you, don't get it. Like, you shouldn't be forced to do one or the other. And, you know, you just
absolutely, yeah.
It's like, you know, obviously they found out that mask, like, I'm not even kidding when I don't hear anything about COVID anymore. And
no, yeah.
And not everybody's vaccinated, so obviously it's like the vaccination couldn't have actually, a vaccination can't cure everything if not everybody is cured. But there's no more, now that they have the vaccine now, it's like COVID essentially is not the like talk around. Like, it's just like,
yeah.
But it can't.
And that's a danger.
It can't be gone because not everybody has the vaccination.
Right. So, and that's the number thing that I want to avoid. Not to avoid, but like I could definitely get into, and I would love to talk about. Like, because there's like to bounce off your conversation is what I'm saying, not what you said, but to bounce off your conversation, and it's very interesting. And if you're interested in listening to it, go to that Joe Rogan podcast, or we'll drop a link in case you don't know how to find it. But it's pretty simple. But yes, like I highly recommend it. It's very enlightening. And then watch the Peter Hotez video if you're interested in that too. Go watch this interview with Joe Rogan and just find out everything you need to know when it comes to education on that issue.
Everyone just do your own research and
yes,
do what makes you what you want to do. Don't let someone force you to do something. You know, if you want to do whatever you feel like is the best with you and everybody around you, you do that.
Isn't it crazy how they kind of criticize people that do their own research? I mean, they literally ostracize people who do their own research. Oh, he's one of those guys that do their own research and stuff and thinks that like they're conspiracy. You're like, no. I'm trying to. I mean, if it's like buying a house, you want to do you want to. Is this fit my budget? Is this big enough square feet? Is there lawn service? Is how much is the trash? How much would my Wi-Fi be? Do I have any kids? Is there? I mean, you wouldn't just go, yeah, that's a cool house. I'll buy it. Unless you're top G, bro. Unless you're like Andrew Tate, you're like, I'll just buy that Bugatti. It's like, it's so crazy. It's so backwards.
Yeah, we definitely going to look at more of that video later because good God Almighty, bro.
Yeah. So do you want to run through start off with our track records of the week?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was enough talk for the vaccine talk for the day. I think we got enough said.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so our track records of the week. This is, again, if you did not catch us in the last episode, this is your lyric, artist, or song of the week that we choose between the two of us. Last week, Hunter did a Drake quote and I did a Cody Johnson quote, which is pretty telling because he specializes in rap and I specializes in country music, and we both love both genres. So I'll start off with mine. My track record of the week is Morgan Wallen, Dying Man.
Okay.
From do you have a Morgan Wallen one as well?
I have Morgan Wallen too. I was like, there's no way we have the same one now.
Okay, thank God. My God, we're on the same wavelength today. But yeah, it's from his new album, One Thing at a Time. And so if you haven't listened to the song, oh my God, Dying Man, Morgan Wallen. It says 21, looking 30, but acting half my age, bound to hit a wall before I ever hit the brakes. And so I think this is very telling because I know a couple of people that might kind of follow this lifestyle where, you might be rough, you might be, drinking and blah, blah, blah all the time, maybe in a past life. At some point I was like this to where, man, I look rough, but I'm not that age and I'm acting like a child. And at a certain point, it was just time to grow up, get my act, and have a different outlook on life. And so I think Morgan Wallen's quote speaks in that sort of way. And I think those who are in that stage of their life to kind of have a come to Jesus meeting. And because, one thing for sure, no girl's going to want to think that's attractive in the long term.
Oh, for sure.
Get your money up, son. Get your money up, get your act up, and do some push-ups. Buy a Bugatti. You idiot.
Well, for my track of the week, I'm also doing a Morgan Wallen. And it's from the song Thought You Should Know. And
great song, bro.
I heard it today, and for y'all who don't know, it's a song, it was like a Mother's Day song. And it said, something just dawned on me. I haven't been home in months. And I heard that and I was like, damn, I haven't seen my family, my mom in a long time. And, coming up in the next few weeks, I'm going to make some time to do that. She's always watching the podcast, always checking up on me. You just listen.
Oh, Chrissy.
Yeah. Thinking those prayers about me ain't working. Like, they are working, just letting my mom know that I miss her and I'll come see her soon. And, if you have a special person like that, mom, father, uncle, aunt, anybody, step parent, like, go tell them how much they mean to you and, just kind of go with that.
That's a good message. And I definitely concur, which hopefully everybody had a good Father's Day, by the way. Father's Day was this past weekend. Hopefully you treated your fathers well. Yeah, great message. Go see your parents. They love you. So, but yeah, so listen to our podcast on Spotify or YouTube every Wednesday. We're going to have some extended platforms in the near future. We're super excited. We've been staying pretty consistent, and we plan on continuing to do so. And we've reached out to some guests, and we're starting to get some things aligned for you guys. We got the organization. Let us know if you want to have some guy that we've had in the past on, like the medical guy, the analyst, Big T, JUCO product, any of those guys that are listed. If y'all want to hear them again before our next, maybe new exterior guest, let us know, DM us, do whatever. Say, yeah, put him on. We like listening to him, and we'll probably follow through. But yeah, next episode will be on Wednesday. This one is airing on Spotify. So check us out on Instagram, TRAK.pod, and find us on TikTok, Twitter, and other Facebook, I guess. You can go on there if you're interested in that sort of thing. But anyway, this is episode 2. Thank you guys very much. You have a good rest of y'all's week.
Y'all take it easy, guys.